Welcome to part 2 of our exercises this week. This week, I want us to focus on putting what we learned from our worksheet into practice. So we're going to actually do our very first sketch in our sketchbook. So go ahead and open up to your first page. And whenever I'm trying to draw something or copy it over, I like to make sure that they're side by side. So I want to move that right next to what I want to draw. Now, for this second activity, I want you to pick your favorite out of these 4 examples that we did together in our last lesson. And I want you to pick one, and now I want you to copy it over into your sketchbook. And I want to work with you to show you how artists would do that. So, I'm going to stick with my example of my Brontosaurus. So when I look at my Brontosaurus and I study it, I'm going to pick out, again, those most important shapes or biggest shapes that I drew first. So in this example, I have the body and the head that I want to draw first. Now, I'm going to draw them over here. Now, I could draw them any size. If I want to make this even bigger, all I got to do is draw a bigger circle here and a bigger head here. And I could easily enlarge it. But I think it would be best if we simply copied it over to start. Once you get practice just copying it over, then you can practice copying it bigger. All right? Now, one more tip that artists use when they're studying an object and trying to draw from a reference is they'll use their fingers and they'll do a little pinching action with their fingers. And they'll use these fingers to measure how big something is. So I'm going to use my fingers to measure this circle, about that big. You can even do a couple of marks if you want, but sometimes just trying to remember with your eyes about how big it was. And then I'm going to draw a circle here. Now notice, I drew a couple circles. I find that helps, especially when you're drawing like circles, to draw a couple. Because it takes time to build up that control in your hand. And the more you do this, the more you practice, the better your circles will get. So even before I start drawing sometimes, I'll just do a circular motion with my hand. And once I feel like I got a good circle going, I'll then slowly lower my pencil and try to draw it. Notice, I'm moving my whole hand when I'm doing that too, not just my wrist. You could do your wrist. I think it's a little easier when you move your whole arm though. All right. The other thing I want you to notice is how lightly I'm drawing my lines. And this is really, really important. Probably one of the more important things I'm going to be teaching you. So how to draw lightly. I like to call these ghost lines. Like they're barely even there. You can't even see them. I don't want you to draw lines really dark because that's going to be really hard to erase. In fact, if I draw really hard and I erase it, you'll still see it because it made an indent in the paper. For our construction lines, we don't want to see any of these lines because again, this is the frame that's going to go underneath. It's going to disappear once we add all the details, but it won't disappear if you draw it too dark. All right, so whisper, sometimes called whisper lines or ghost lines, draw very, very lightly. All right, I might draw a little darker so you guys can see, but know that you should draw them as lightly as you can so they're easy to erase. All right, so that's the body. Here's the head. Well, maybe too small to measure, but I could measure how far away it is from the body. The space right here. So I'm going to measure that. So it should be right about here. Next, let's get those legs. Those are rectangles. So I'm going to notice this. Let's see. Oh, it looks like this rectangle. I'm noticing that it's right at the back of this circle. So that's when I'm going to start drawing my straight line down. A little bit further in because it's pretty skinny. And I'm noticing that it's in front of my circle, not behind, in front. So I'm going to actually draw it kind of on top of this circle here. And then it's going to stop about there. You could even measure how far to make that. But once you get enough practice, you can kind of use your mind to measure. The other thing I'm noticing about all these feet, now that I've drawn them in rectangles, is that they're all the same length. In other words, they all stop at the same part here, so I can even draw a line if I want to help show where those feet should stop. right, these other two legs are on the other side of the Brontosaurus. So they're actually going to be behind. So I'm going to start at the bottom of the circle so they don't look like they're going in front of it. All right, then one more. This one's really close actually. I'm noticing there's a very little space. All right, so I've got all 4 legs drawn. Now we need to connect these two, and like I showed in my other example, I'm going to use simple lines to connect them. So I'm going to notice, let's see, I can even use my pencil and my finger. See how I'm doing that? I'm moving them both at the same time. That can sometimes help you also kind of picture where to start. All right, and then this line almost follows this curve of the belly of the Brontosaurus up and around to the head. Okay, I'm noticing that this could be a little thicker, so I'm going to fix it. One other tip I'd like to give: if you made a mistake and you'd like to fix it, draw your correction first before you erase the mistake. If you erase the mistake first, there's a good chance you'll make that mistake again. You'd be surprised how easy it is to do the same mistake over and over and over again. So to help you know where that mistake was, don't erase it until you make the correction. All right, and then I'm going to do the tail, which follows along the back, because it's the spine. And again, that comes down to learning like a scientist. That's why artists will study skeletons, so we can picture where the spine is and where things line up. All right, now that I've got my basic shapes copied over, next is the fun part. We can study all those details. We want to make sure we got the basic shapes first because that's much easier. And in our next lesson, when we learn how to change things, it's going to make that part easier too. And by change things, I mean if you want to move where the head is, instead of up here, maybe moving it down here. Much easier with a simple circle than a complicated, detailed drawing of a head. All right, so let's look at the other details now. Let's do the tail. I'm noticing that it's coming out from the bottom of this circle here. Comes out, curves up. Now this is kind of weird because this tail kind of goes in front. So I'm going to study how this tail goes in front. It comes down like this. And I'm noticing that it gets skinnier and skinnier and skinnier. So make sure you capture that. And then there's some overlap there. I know that the tail is behind it. So I'm going to erase those lines. Little things like that you'll notice and you'll get better at as you practice. I can also erase some lines that I know aren't there, like from my circle, which is why we drew these so lightly. Let's see, the mouth of the Brontosaurus, I can make it more like a rectangle here. And then you can have really a lot of fun doing all the wrinkles and other details you see. Like I see some wrinkles coming out from behind that leg here. Or some wrinkles along the belly of the Brontosaurus going all the way down. You can go back in and draw darker now, all the wrinkles and all the details of the toes and everything. So you draw your basic shapes lightly first, trace on top with some darker lines, and then go ahead and add in all the other tiny little details. This is the magic, this is the trick, this is the secret behind learning how to draw what you see easier and thinking like an artist. So I want you, for this next activity, to pick your favorite, copy it into your sketchbook. There will be a spot in our seesaw activity where you can take a picture of this and add it. Now, if you're in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, I'm going to have an additional challenge for you. I want you to find an image. Could be off of Google, could be out of a book, and I want you to do the exact same thing. Find the basic shapes, and then slowly go through the steps to build up all those details. If you finish with all of these and you have some extra time, I say spend it on an extra page in your sketchbook, sketching out maybe what you want to do for your very first project. And if that first idea has to do with an image that you can get a reference of, maybe find a reference for that to help you with your sketches. Okay, so finish this, copy it over, finish those seesaw activities, and in your extra time, maybe start your first sketch. All right, I'll see you next week.